All right. Welcome to What's the Scenario with PLRB, where we explore claims and coverage scenarios relevant to insurance professionals. I'm Brendan McLaughlin.
I'm Mike Broad.
I'm Tim Havler.
So, Mike, what's the scenario?
Well, today I'm putting on my old CGL cap, and I will tell you that I am not an attorney. Like Tim and Brendan are both attorneys, so they might know some of these cool language and issues more than I am, more than me. So today we've got Nate. Nate is a longtime personal lines adjuster who is making the switcheroo to commercial lines. For his first claim, he's being thrown right into the deep end. Taking over a claim from a retiring adjuster. This claim involves contractual issues between a general contractor and an electrician. The electrician got his wires crossed, which caused some damage, some property damage. And now all of a sudden, via email or snail mail, he's starting to get letters and notes from attorneys and other insurance companies, and they're throwing around phrases like contractual indemnity and additional insureds and insured contract and stuff like that. Nate wants some help reading through and understanding the CGL policy, including one exclusion that's called the contractual liability exclusion. At least he'd like to learn how to pronounce some of these words that are being bandied about by the insurance companies and or attorneys.
I wanted to mention that we've got a new voicemail hotline for adjuster stories. It is 630-509-8704. I don't know if we can make a song out of that. But I don't know. How do you feel that we're kind of opening ourselves up to whoever calls that line could leave a voicemail? Might get some crazy stories. Are we feeling ready for this?
Stories.
I mean,
yeah, it'd be awesome to get some crazy stories. I can tell you a funny. I used to be what's called in the industry back in the day a resident adjuster, so I worked out of my home. And this was in lovely Virginia Beach, Virginia. And if you know Virginia Beach, it's home to some great naval bases and Marines, and I think there might even be some Navy SEALs running around there. So always a big military town, which was cool. And then one night, so I had my zero technology other than an answering machine. And my office at the time was probably 20 feet away from my bedroom. So in the middle of the night, about 1 o'clock in the morning, it started getting phone calls on my work number. And I'm like, oh, geez, what kind of insurance emergency could this be so early in the morning? And instead, it was a drunken, and I'm going to assume it might have been a drunken sailor. I don't know, but somebody who really wanted me to come pick them up and had the wrong number. But I was too lazy to get out of my bed and answer the thing and figured, oh, they'll stop calling or call the right number. But no, about 4 or 5 times in a row, about every 10 minutes, I'd have this person call and leave a very drunken message about, come pick me up. And no, I'm not going to come pick you up. I don't even know who you are, so leave me alone. But there was my funniest, not voicemail, but back in the day, my answering machine as a claims rep. So hopefully we don't get that kind of stuff.
well, what can you do about a drunken sailor? You know,
That was a good song. What can you do about a drunken sailor? Don't answer the phone. That's what I can do. I'll tell you that.
yeah. All right, well, let's hop into it. So like we were saying, contractual indemnity, additional insureds. I can pronounce them. I don't know how fast I could say them. I just kind of forget what language is when I hear a lot. Just hear these words just over and over again. Can you help me break this down?
I will try to. So now under the commercial general liability policy, we're going to cover property damage or bodily injury that happens because of an occurrence. And then to kind of tailor that down, you have some exclusions. So there's an exclusion in the commercial general liability policy that talks about we're not going to pick up liability assumed under a contract. So you might ask yourself, Mike, what kind of contract we talking about here? Oh, and my simple man approach, Brennan, is we're talking about kind of like two-party contracts here, not three-party contracts. Meaning what? So let's say that Tim down there makes the mistake of hiring me as a painting contractor. And I say, Tim, I'll paint the interior of your office there, some vivid, wonderful PLRB blue color, and it only costs you $1,000. So would you be kind enough to give me $500 up front then we'll pay the rest on completion. And if so, we'll sign this here contract. So, Tim, you going to sign that contract?
Sure.
All right, sure thing. Give me $500, right? Got to buy my materials and whatnot.
Will do.
All right, awesome. Oh, sucker. So you give me that $500. What do I do, Tim? I'm not a painter. I'm going to take my family on a cruise and spend your $500 elsewhere. So what's Tim? What are you going to do? You're an attorney, right? What are you going to do to me?
Yeah. Wish you a good cruise, and I hope you make good use of my $500.
You are not. You're going to sue me in a court of law and probably represent yourself in court, which would be fine. So let's say you did sue me and I went back to Brennan, who's my Nater in this case, handling my claim, and say, hey, defend me under my CGL policy because Tim's suing me for breach of contract for $1,000. Brennan, is that where this contractual liability exclusion may come into play?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know if you're gonna get the insurance. I don't know
Right.
if you get your insurance policy involved in that.
Exactly, because it's a two-party contract between me and Tim. If there's an issue there, then Tim and I have to handle it outside of court and certainly outside of the GL policy because it's not designed to be a performance contract. The GL policy is there to take care of property damage or bodily injury that happens because of an occurrence, which is otherwise known as an accident. It's not a guarantee of your work, product, or quality.
So what you're telling me is no contracts can be covered under a CGL policy?
I'm not telling you that, Tim. I'm telling you that my easy way of remembering it is yeah, no two party stuff. So between me and you, no way. But let's say between me and you, or in our example up above, we had what? We had an electrician and then we had a general contractor. And because the wires were crossed, it caused damage to who? A third party out there. So whoever owned that property got damaged. So that is the kind of contract that potentially there could be some GL insurance coverage for. And why? Because there's a cool, why I love, you didn't ask, but I'm going to tell you guys. Why do I love the commercial general liability policy? Oh, because it's like a huge puzzle. It's like a big Jenga game. Got coverage here, you pull it out there, there's an exception here, there's an exclusion there, there's a definition there. Oh, it's a fascinating, wonderful time going through this policy trying to figure it out. So, in that spirit, yes, we have a contractual liability exclusion, but we have an exception to that exclusion that said, hey, that there thing we were just talking about, that contractual liability exclusion does not apply if something's an insured contract. And it's in quotes. So, Tim, you know what's quotes mean in an insurance policy?
We gotta go to the definition section.
Exactly. So there's a definition about what an insured contract is, and then we'll find out that one of the things that's covered as an insured contract is these contracts where I agree with the general contractor to have their back if something happens because of my work. So if I cross my wires and it caused some damage, somebody comes back to us and says, "Hey, pay for that damage that you caused to the wiring." The general is going to say, "Mike, as the electrician, have my back, help me out, cover me for this." So a lot of times when we pick up the contractual liability of another person, that could be an insured contract and covered under the CGL policy. Oh, there's other cool stuff in there too as part of insured contracts. And one of them, if we have time, we'll talk about it. It's called a sidetrack agreement. So for 5,000 extra bonus points, does anybody know what a sidetrack agreement is?
Well, it's we're gonna agree that we're not gonna get distracted and go off on a digression.
Aha.
We're gonna stick to the topic.
Thank you, Brendan. Good point.
Yeah.
If we get time, we'll get back to that. So, audience out there thinking about it, or Google it real quick and then we'll find out. So, next topic, Brendan. What do you want to chat about now?
Well, so I guess we've got these. You talked about um, the contract between general contractors and
Right.
subcontractors. Um, I feel like you kind of covered that contractual indemnity stuff. But what didn't I hear something about additional insureds?
Right.
Is that like the same? That's like basically the same thing, right?
Similar but different. How's that, Brendan? How do you
Okay.
like that? So contractual indemnity is by agreement, we're going to pick up the liability for somebody else, tort liability of somebody else. The additional insured is kind of cool because here it's by actual endorsement to the policy. So in my example, let's just say the electrician and the general contractor just signed a general agreement saying, hey, if anything happens from your work, electrician, you're going to have my back. Okay, sign that. There you go. So that might be a contractual indemnity because it's would meet the definition of an insured contract because I'm accepting the tort liability from another party. But some people would say, hey, general contractors especially, I want the full protection that your insurance policy could provide. So I'd like to be named as an additional insured under your contract. So this one comes up. It's not just because you signed a contract with me agreeing to accept liability if I do some, or I will accept liability if I do something wrong that you get brought into. This one has to do with I want to be named as an additional insured under your policy. So that's added by endorsement. So here you'd have to check your endorsements, and a lot of times on these contracts that involve parties that are like building a building, so between the general contractor and one of the subcontractors, the general contractor will say, hey, sub electrician, name me as an additional insured under your policy. And you have to add that by endorsement. So now the general contractor, even though I haven't paid one bit of premium that the poor electrician paid, they're still showing up as an additional insured under the electrician's contract, and they get protection as an additional insured under that contract. Again, the endorsement, why you want to pick it up and read it, because there could be some limitations to what that coverage additional insured applies to. But you're getting all the rights and obligations as an insured under that contract by endorsement, which provides, it looks like, at least a little bit more coverage, at least a little more specific coverage than the contractual indemnity agreement piece.
So if you're the general contractor, is one of these or the other considered usually better than the other one, or is it more of a pros and cons, pros and cons?
I think, yeah, it's more pros and cons. You would think if I'm being added as an additional insured, haha, that's pretty cool because I'm getting a lot of cool coverages just like I was insured under that contract, where you're not getting that with the contractual indemnity piece. But I look at it this way, not only as an additional insured, now you have not only the rights of the insured, but you have the obligations as well, Tim. So you're familiar with the letter C in a contract, the conditions. So even under first party ones, there's things an insured has to do. So even as an additional insured, I still have to do things like talk to the insurance adjuster and make sure I share recorded statement, tell them what happened, or share any contracts I have. I have a duty to assist in the investigation, to do things timely. So there's a lot of stuff as an insured that I have to do in order to make sure that I have coverage. So while there might be some added protection there, which is awesome, you also have some obligations that maybe you don't have as a contractual indemnity, where I just signed a contract saying I got your back. If Nate reaches out to me as a contractual indemnity person, says, hey, you need to talk to me, you need to send me all these records, and we'll say, show me where. You don't. I just got to reimburse you if something happens and I found liable for something. Haha. But the weakness there is there's some potential issues with one of the other cool things that the CGL policy provides is not only loss or things that you might be legally liable for that's covered under the policy and damages, but also some cool defense coverage. So if we get sued, it's expensive to get an attorney involved to defend you. So as an additional insured, there's some pretty good broad defense coverage obligations as well. Sometimes as a contractual indemnity, there's more things that you have to do in order to get that defense coverage. So that's one of the weaknesses. So that's where you might not be so bold to tell Nate to pound salt and I'm not going to cooperate with you, because Nate might be able to come back and say, well, you want your defense costs covered, then you need to cooperate us. So a little more nuanced. There's pluses and minuses to both, but I don't know, Tim. It's kind of like 6 of one, half dozen the other. You know what I mean?
Mm. With great power comes great responsibility.
Here, here.
What Spider-Man told me.
Summarize that. Yes.
Sounds like it probably makes the CGL policy pretty flexible when it comes to you might have a really strong relationship between a general contractor and a subcontractor, or it could be a small job. Seems like it could handle a number of situations.
Right. Very, very apropos, sir. Well said.
I can't stand it for one more second. What is a sidetrack agreement? Please.
Aha!
You got to tell me, because
I want to find out first, was Tim on the Google machine and looking into it or not?
Nope.
All right. So here we go. So one of the exceptions to that contractual exclusion, it says, all right, we said one of the exceptions is for insured contractual stuff. And when you look at that definition of an insured contract, one of the things it talks about is a sidetrack agreement. Well, is that some kind of agreement between Brendan and I to exclude Tim from any kind of promotional stuff on the podcast? That's kind of our sidetrack agreement. No, it has to do with railroads, believe it or not. Aha. So you got your main line, railroad track heading down. And have you ever seen, like by a factory, some other place, you might have that other track that kind of goes off to the side of the main line? Know what I'm saying?
okay.
That might service that individual factory. Let's say I'm producing my widgets and I want to ship my widgets by train. So you have a side track that comes off the main line that goes to your factory where you load all of your widgets, and then the train comes, picks it up, takes it on down the line. So, of course, a railroad, they're great people, but are they going to be friendly enough to cover all the liability that might happen from that sidetrack thing? Heck no. They say we want to be protected. So, for some reason, Tim, you have your factory and your business and you have some kind of a sidetrack agreement with a railroad, you might find some coverage for that under the CGL policy. How's that?
Good to know.
Uh-huh. So now we all know what a sidetrack is. What fun.
So, Mike, what can we take away from this scenario?
Sidetracks. Oh, kidding. Of course, let's do this. I think there's three main points here, Brennan, we want to be wary of or aware of. First, any kind of GL claim that you have, any kind of liability claim, gather all of your documents. Geez, that's important. So your policy, get any endorsements, look for that additional insured endorsement, see if it applies here, and make sure you get all those contracts between the parties that spells out what obligations each of them have to each other. So get all your stuff together. Then, second part, which was always the hardest part for me, read all that stuff that you gathered. So I was good at gathering. I wasn't good at reading. So read all that stuff that you got together, figure out, hey, is there any kind of coverage here by endorsement through an additional insured status, or are we just relying upon a contract that those folks signed that says, hey, we agree to indemnify each other, hold each other harmless? See what you got. And then, based on all of your analysis, your gathering, your reading, handle the claim based on its merits.
All right, Mike.
Yeah?
That was very enlightening.
Excellent.
Very much. And if I wanted to learn more, where's a good place you could point me to?
That's a loaded question, sir. But of course, Tim, I would point you towards the fabulous website known as www.plrb.org. All sorts of cool stuff there. Here, for CGL related content, you would want to check out two hubs. One of the hubs would be our liability hub. So check that out. Look up GL. You can get policy annotations. You can get 50 state surveys on additional insureds. Heck, put additional insured in the search. What's that called? Search, whatever the search. Hit
Search icon, search bar.
There you go. Thank you. Search bar. Search on additional insureds. But you can also check out our friends under the Education Hub, right, Brendan?
Yes.
Education. We got C courses on GL policies, on work product stuff, on contractual indemnity. Lots of awesome stuff under the CGL. Oh, no. Let's see. There's also awesome stuff under CGL boss, but lots of awesome stuff under the Education Hub that can help you out. But the main hub, with any liability questions, coverage questions you have, of course, check out the legal side. They will be happy to help you, or you can self-service by checking out some of the cool content that I just talked about. So, Brenner, will you share these fabulous links that we just talked about in the show notes, please?
Yes, and there you'll also find a recap of the key points from this episode and links to our social media. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us, and please give us a call at 630-509-8704 and leave a voicemail to share your adjuster story. We'll see you next time.
Yay, see you next time. Leave those stories.
The views and opinions expressed in this resource are those of the individual speaker and not necessarily those of the Property and Liability Resource Bureau, its membership, or any organization with which the presenter is employed or affiliated. The information, ideas, and opinions are presented as information only and not as legal advice or offers of representation. Individual policy language and state laws vary, and listeners should rely on guidance from their companies and counsel as appropriate.